So if you want a full, very intellectual and educative and beautifully fun review of the Black Panther, this is the review for you to watch. If you learned something and you want to see how you can reach out to me to continue doing this video, reach out and email me at adiola@thesingishdiva.com. Hi guys, welcome to the Singlish Diva. Here is Adiola Naomi with the packed nuanced review of the Black Panther. So, disclaimer, if you have not watched the movie, please do not watch this because it's full of spoilers, literally a lot of spoilers. And also disclaimer, this is gonna be a long video. Look, I took notes. 1, 2, 3. Oh my god. There is one. Yeah, 3. But so there is, just to say that the Black Panther film is incredible, is amazing. There's a lot of representation with 98% black cast, black from everywhere. Literally, it's like a Pan-African movie. Everybody is in that film. But I will not be talking about that because I actually did a different review where I actually suggest you should watch. I'm going to upload that the same week as this one, where you will see me talking about representation, especially of black women, dark-skinned black women. But this is not that video. This is a much more nuanced, and I'm trying to take the angle of the African diaspora and disconnect that kind of the bridge that Black Panther kind of bring to the screen that we've not seen in a while, especially the two cultures of African. I don't think there is an African identity, but I mean, for people in the diaspora, they kind of always say this about Africans. So I'm gonna say Africans and African Americans in reality, but from the film it's mostly Wakandans and African Americans and the global whatever is the black global body. I don't even think this exists. Like, we don't have a global black identity, but people in the West, most especially African American, think this is a thing, which I kind of understand that in Europe and in the West and in America. When I say America, I mean North and South and everything, you know, and also try to put the West Indies in there, is that there is a black identity. So if you are from the West, especially the global North, the way we think is there is a black identity as black people living in the global North, but it doesn't really exist to most people coming from especially the continent of Africa. Like, we have I'm gonna touch upon this actually in the video. So let's just go with the first one that I find incredible, or this music. Oh my god, the cinematography is incredible. Everything is intentional. The colors are intentional. Like, you can see a lot of like interviews of Ryan Coogler talking about the colors he chose. They were the Pan-African colors, the colors of the tribes, colors that they were, like the clothing. Lupita, who is Nakia, Okoye, who is the head general of the Dora Milaje, the Panther, like T'Challa, all the colors that are worn, even the clothes of Erik Killmonger, who was supposedly I wouldn't call him a villain, I think it will be the antagonist of the protagonist. Yeah, the colors, everything is so intentional, and I feel like the songs were the most perfect for me personally as an African who has lived in West Africa some of my life. Like, I've lived in Nigeria, I've lived in Niger Republic, so I know a lot of things coming from that part of the world. And the music, especially in the beginning, like seeing men on their horses. Are they horses or camel? I wasn't very sure. I've watched the film 4 times, so I don't know when will I be sure about this. But anyway, let's go back to it. Wearing their Tuareg and just dressed like the songs that starts with Awusa song, and I understand Awusa, so it was just so beautiful. It was so touching. And then the scenery in the coronation, where like the challenge scene and the song is just like, you know, West African, so West African, you know, dance with your shoulders. It's so good, man. So yeah, let's get about that. I'm gonna take about, like, I have notes, so I'm gonna take the light stuff and then go to the doomy gloomy, very serious stuff later on. The waterfalls battle scene was incredible. Yes, definitely. The ritual, oh my god. Okay, so one of the things I love about Wakanda is, even though it's such a futuristic and technologically advanced country, they still stick to tradition. And I feel like this would have been what Africa will have morphed into if foreign influences, colonization, did not come into the picture. Like, there were no use of guns in Wakanda at all, because, you know, as Okoye said in a scene, primitive, so primitive guns. Ew. The Dora Milaje will use their spears that is made out of vibranium, and then you see the scene where the king is sent back to the ancestors. Oh my god, that is one of the most beautiful and genuinely authentically African, I think, as I say, like each culture in Africa do have a connection back to the ancestors, like making sure that he got the the heart-shaped herb and then give it to him and then bury. You know, there's like a significance with burying someone on the ground, like making sure that they're covered, so you send them back to the ancestors, and then he discussed with his father. And this is one of my favorites, when his father's like, he said he wasn't ready, and his father's like, a man who does not prepare his children for his own death has failed as a father. Damn, that really ripped out my heart. I was like, ah, true bombs, right? Like just throwing true bombs right in the beginning of the films. And if you watch the film from the very beginning, it was actually Njobu telling the story of Wakanda to Erik Killmonger, who is like in Jadaka, his son. And you could just see the way he was telling him of being an outsider, because even though Erik is Wakandan, he is raised in Auckland in America. So he's literally like, they will think you're lost. This is a different scene, of course, when he came, and you know. So anyway, that ritual scene, the significance of culture emerging, and even though they have this amazing technology, even though they have like these planes that do not exist, you know, everybody's have like their laptops just screened and projected and how it is, but they still keep that. And the praying, like they covered him and they're like praying to the ancestors, like bless the ancestors, calling the ancestors. It was just so amazing and so significant for me. Like I feel like one of the things colonization took away from Africans is their own beliefs that exist on the land before all these dogmatic religions now came into place, like Christianity, Islam, and all of that. And those are the influences of the outside world. And we have lost our identity when it comes to that. We've lost that. And I feel like there should be a renaissance of us going back to what used to be and what could have been. So yeah, one of the also the things is the cultural aspects of the two queens. So now I'm gonna go right, like, yeah, I'm just gonna go directly into when T'Chaka was telling T'Challa, his son, in the ancestral plane about how to be a king. And this is one of the biggest thing I think like we should talk about, because he told him like, you're a good man and good men cannot be king. I was like, yeah, that makes sense, because we will get to see that in the rest of the film, where there are so many difficult situations that just make it difficult for T'Challa to make some concrete decision that must be made by a king, that a king would be able to. Like we can see the way T'Chaka killed his brother. His brother Njobu pulled the gun. Like literally he was sent as a war dog to the United States to help with the civil rights movement, and after experiencing all of that mass incarceration, experiencing the things that were experienced, the assassination of the people back then, so he was telling his brother like he betrayed their country because of that. So he literally helped a South African white guy, close, to steal vibranium so he can help the movement of the black people in America, which to him was justifiable, but to Wakanda, who preaches and live in isolation, that is not justifiable. And he was like, you're gonna come to the council and they will just judge you. But instead of him to do that and like go back to Wakanda and go back and just face the jury and everybody, he decided to pull a gun on Zuri, like one of the people that his brother sent as a spy on him. And that looks very American. Yeah, gun and violence is very American, even now in the world that we see it, and even in the film, as the Wakandans were saying. And one of the things is that he wouldn't have died if he didn't pull that gun, but because he pulled the gun, his brother had to kill him. And of course, I'm not justifying the fact that his brother killed him and then they left Erik behind and left him in Auckland, but it just shows that violence sometimes is not justifiable, but sometimes we need to understand why. Like some people, I read reviews and people are saying that T'Challa killed N'Jobu because he want his lineage to keep ruling. No. Zuri was telling T'Challa, he said we had to keep the lie, so that's why they couldn't tell Erik. Like, so nobody actually in the, what's it called, in Wakanda know that N'Jobu betrayed Wakanda, so they didn't know, but they just think he disappeared and that was all. But he betrayed them, and that's the same radicalization, extreme radicalization of N'Jobu is what we see manifest in his son, Erik, in Jadaka, which his Africanness, I don't want to take that away. So why T'Challa was trying to restore, like T'Challa, he's a very good man. As we said before, his father was saying that a good man cannot be a king, but we also see him in difficult situation in terms of his ex-girlfriend, Nakia, was telling him that isolation of Wakanda is really not good to see what the world is going through. Like, they had all these resources, all this harm, but they can't help their brothers and sisters on the continent and even across the diaspora. But we could also see that in him there is a, you know, like his character grew into a dichotomy where he was like, should we stay in isolation as my forefathers have been, or should I choose to be a different king? And that is when Nakia was telling him that you need to choose what kind of king you will be, not your father's mistake. Like, people, we inherit mistakes from our parents, we inherit mistakes from our ancestors, but the thing is, what do we do with those mistakes and how do we learn from them and move on? And we can see that when Njadaka came back and came, you know, with his American ethnocentrism and imperialistic ideologies of let's kill everybody and make a third world war and kill the colonizers by using their own weapon and their own tactics against them and rule the world and now colonize the world. It's just like, you hate colonizers because they colonize the world, and you now want to tell us that we should colonize the world. Like, violence with violence does not work. And that is one of the biggest thing when I realized that he is being, this is what he learns. He's MIT educated. He's a CIA mercenary to kill. He literally destabilized countries and nations and government for the United States. That is his job. He doesn't really know to do something else. And I sympathize with him and his rage and his passion and his revolutionaryism, but nah. The next thing I wanted to talk about is the ability to love and still critique something. So one of the things I feel like I saw in social media is people saying Killmonger, he's right, like they agree with him, and everybody else is wrong. Or, for example, if you like Killmonger, you cannot like T'Challa. I feel like these two people are very two different individuals who have the same motive to liberate the black bodies around the world, but they have different ways to go around them. And actually, I wouldn't even say T'Challa have a way to liberate black bodies. He's not his aim. Like, he said it in one of the scenes where he was fighting, no, wait, he was talking to T'Challa at the, when he came to the palace, that my people or Wakandans, that's my priority. And one of the biggest misconceptions with African diasporans and people of non-direct African descent is that there is one unique identity that is called the black identity. No, that does not exist in any other place than in the West. The black identity is not a thing, except for if you go back to Pan-Africanism, where there is a unification of having a united Africa. That is a very different discussion, but that still makes sure that we realize our differences and our diversity as a people. Like, the cultures that T'Challa grew up in, he was educated in his family. His father was like, you stayed with me throughout, you're by my side. He was also college educated at Oxford, so he knows how to be a diplomat. He also knew how to be a ruler. A ruler is someone who knows and put forward the priority and the goodness of his nation and not himself. And that's what T'Challa has been doing, and that's what he has learned. But to Erik Killmonger, that's not the same thing. Erik is about the self. He cares that people were killed. Like, he had all this scarification on his body where he was talking about have killed, like at the battle scene, he was saying, I have killed so many people to get here to kill you. He was talking literally to his cousin, because T'Challa is his cousin. Like, I'm here to kill you. I've lived my whole life to kill you. Like, how can you live your whole life to kill someone else? Like, wow, the toxic energy of all of that anger. Like, he has so much anger in him that it's just impossible for him to see justice in any other way, like justice to be delivered otherwise. For him, that's just an impossible thing. And I feel sad for that because I empathize with him. And you can see that when he died, like at the scene, he realized that he's gonna die. Then he started talking about how he really loves Wakanda and the stories his father told him were fairy tale. And I think that is one of the biggest thing that kind of touched with me with the way African Americans see Africa. Like African Americans live in an imperialist country that benefit from imperialism, that still does benefit from imperialism today. And I think that's one conversation is to think about, how does that imperialism benefit them, even as African American, and even though as an oppressed group of people in the West, in America specifically, to realize that not everything you learn about Africa is true, because learning from the colonizers' tools, we all are educated by the colonizers. So truth be told, we are all getting a colonized education. But thinking that you can just walk into Wakanda at any time and any day, take the throne because that's what you want. Like, you don't know these people, you don't know these cultures. These people are deliberate in everything that they do, the way they dress, the way they carry themselves, the way they talk, even at the way the tribes collect together, like at the council of the tribe leaders, the way they are, the way they communicate. Like you can see the king walking down the street, seeing everybody going about their business, and the way they just relax themselves. These are the things, and education, cultural education, I think mainly, that Killmonger did not have. And I can see a lot of parallel with our American cousins saying that, I'm saying American because that's what the conversation has been since a week, 2 weeks now that I've seen it. It's a lot about African American thinking about Africans leaving them behind, Africans not coming for them to help. And I'm just like, you do know that imperialism was a global history, that all this touched us all at the same time. And if you read more about Pan-Africanism, you can see that the independence of some African nations were orchestrated and helped by the Western people, like the Civil Rights Movement, the Black Panther movement, were all connected. Like Malcom X traveled to Ghana to meet people on the continent. Audre Lorde talks a lot about going back to the continent to meet and listen and hear and learn. And I feel like a lot of time, even us Africans who live in the diaspora, we have this savior mentality, which is a product of white supremacy and a product of the white savior syndrome that we also carry of, I want to go to Africa and change things. No, there are people there. People are there. People have been feminists there before you know what feminism is. People have been living feminist lifestyle before you know what feminism is. So you cannot come to a country that you know nothing of the nuances and want to change things and want to rule. Like he was saying to them, is this your king? The way he killed Zuri, you killed the only priest. Like the significance of Zuri in that country is he's their spiritual leader, and he killed him without flinching. That says a lot for lack of cultural respect. And coming after his, even we can see like when he was sent back to the ancestral plane by the woman, the priest woman, he had to go back to Auckland in a room where his father and him were abandoned because he can't join the ancestors on the Wakandan ancestral plane. You can see what happened. So his the body of his dad was still in Auckland. And you can also see one thing about this is like, his father was talking to him and saying, no tears for me, and he says, no, everybody dies. That's your dad. Like, it's impossible. Like, you see the difference, right? In the ancestral plane, T'Chaka and T'Challa were like hugging, even though there are things that T'Challa didn't know about his dad that he wasn't proud of. Like, he was proud of his dad, and he was very there learning and telling his dad, I need you to teach me, I'm not ready for you to go. But then you see the other side of the coin, Erik Killmonger telling his father that I won't cry, like, no tears for me. And he's like, no, everybody dies. Like, this is your father. Everybody dies, but wow. It's just very, very telling. I mean, and also we didn't get to see Erik Killmonger's mother at all, which is also a little bit of like an erasure of African American women in the film, because it's very centered on Africa in terms of Wakanda. It's very, very African nuanced, and the woman, I did a video on that. So the women are very nuanced in a way Hollywood has never given us a nuanced film on black women, especially black dark-skinned women. And I'm very wary of white feminists who were all ragging about Wonder Woman, her saying nothing about this. I'm like, yeah, but in another video. I'm not gonna talk now. Savior syndrome, I've touched on that. Time to go back. Yeah, so I think this is time for us to go back to the Pan-African movement to read more. I can suggest like Chinua Achebe wrote a lot about it, and like how he, even during the Biafra war, how he had to go to Sankara, and he had to go to Canada, and he has to go to the Black Americans, like to get ideas and help from them. So the movement have always been interconnected, and I feel like when the United States had civil rights movement, Africa had to fight for independence. A lot of African nations had to fight for independence. We still have Zimbabwe, who got independent very, very like recently. We need to talk about that. Like the oppressive system of white supremacy does not affect one person, and not one person have all the powers and the tools and resources. We're all interconnected, and if we know and learn this, we can maybe take part of the Pan-African movement, what works back then and what didn't work. We can put them side to side, look at them and take what works and use them to build a united Africa today. I feel like we can do it, but for us to do it, we need to have this discussion of why didn't he work back then? What were the flaws and how can we fix that? Why we see, oh yeah, so in the movie there are literally 3 white people who had speaking role, which is Klaus, Agent Ross, and who else? There was one more person, I don't remember. Anyway, so there are just 3 white people who I love this, that I don't remember. Yeah, I think it was Berkey, I'm not sure, but yeah, because Berkey was, so when Agent Ross came to Wakanda, we could see also the sympathy and empathy nature of Wakandans. Like, even though they can see what's going on in the world, they know their experience. Like, come on, T'Challa is like Oxford educated, so they know what was going on in terms of like how the world is being played out in terms of politics and power politics especially. So we could see like when T'Challa brought in Agent Ross and Okoye was like, why are we gonna bring him in? He's a CIA. Especially using the CIA guy. That was very deep for Ryan Coogler, because the CIA has helped de-established a lot of African government. Like, even like, let's think about Sankara. Like, really, let's think about Kwame. Let's think about a lot of African nations that have lost their leaders, their radical leaders, due to this help and the establishment of the CIA, but they still bring a CIA into this film somehow, agent into the film, and he was like, he wasn't a white savior, he was the token. And I feel like this is one of the reasons why white people need to watch Black Panther, is that to see how it feels to be, number one, with no agency, and also to be a token. One of the things I also love about Wakandans is the sympathy and empathy given to him. Like, they healed him. Like Zuri healed Bucky, who we're gonna see in Infinity War, and they healed Agent Rose, and what we see is him helping them during the battle, in terms of not really helping, but being one of the people that they used, because literally everything he did was given instruction by Shuri. So she was given instruction, and one of my favorite and funniest part was when they were at the palace of M'Baku. M'Baku is the classic, you know, like he was the tribe that do not come to, that does not like join in the council. So they're the one tribe that still worship the Mane, the hate god and stuff. So on the mountain, so when the king died at the battle with Erik, they had to like go to him with Lupita and the badass Angela Bassett and Letitia Shuri, who is Shuri, to go to him and give him the heart-shaped herb so they can help fight Erik Killmonger, because Lupita specifically said, a stranger sits on our throne. And this is one of the things I feel like a lot of African Americans feel in there, so we're strangers in this land. Unfortunately, yes, you are, because the African cultures are very tribal. Like, every tribe have their own people, and that's how people know you. Even you can see from where the scene they ask you, like, who are you? That is a very, very important question. Who are you? And you always have to say, I am this, the son of that. So like T'Challa had to say, I am T'Challa, the son of T'Chaka. And it seems like a very simple question, but if you ask a lot of people, they might not even know what this means. Like, who are you? Who are you? And one of the beauty of African Americans that they don't really see, and we as Africans don't really celebrate a lot, is the new cultures. Because African American had to create a new culture from the rest of the African cultures that was left to them from their ancestors. They had to cook. And one of the beautiful things about the South of the United States is you can see all this, like the Creole and the diversity of collecting all of it together, so that you might not be able to pinpoint where in Africa these cultures come from, but you can tell that these are hybrid cultures from Africa that have been brought here and have mixed together and have been literally given a new version, and that's fine. This is the African American culture, and it's a beautiful one and should be celebrated. And I feel like not celebrating that erases the cultures, and trying to get an African culture can sound fascinating and beautiful to African American, but the truth of the matter is there is really no African culture. There is Yoruba culture, there is an Igbo culture, there is a Fulani culture, there is a Hausa culture, there is Beriberi culture. Yes, because in Africa the structures that were built by the colonizers were nations that do not actually merge, nations that do not speak the same language, and they are to benefit the colonizers in Berlin after Berlin. So they were to colonizers benefit, not to ours. So for example, as a Nigerian, if you see me, I'm not gonna necessarily tell you I'm Nigerian. I'll tell you I'm a Yoruba woman and I wear my ashoke and everything, because that's the culture I was raised in. And the vast majority of Nigerians, it's just so massive. Like, we have so many cultures and so many traditions that it's just so hard to claim one. And it's the same thing with Africa. There are 54 nations. How can we claim to have an African identity? So this is one of the things why we as an African continent cannot give an African identity, because it doesn't exist. Even when you watch film and they say there's African film, 90% it's gonna be Nollywood. So basically Yoruba and a bit of Igbo. So when people want an African culture, you have to think of, does it exist? No, it does not exist. And that's why we cannot give it to you. And an African American culture is as good as a Yoruba culture, is as good as the Igbo culture, because those are cultures that we celebrate. Those are what our ancestors left to us. And those are the things that we should celebrate with pride. And I feel like I really appreciate the African American culture, because even with the everything, like if you see even Haiti in the West, if you go to the West Indies and the Caribbean, you see Haiti, Jamaica, they have their own culture. Everybody brings something to the table, and it's okay if it's not identical to Africa, and it's okay if we don't have the same culture. It's okay to have the multiple diversity and celebrate that. Of course, the Africanness of African American is still there, and the Africanness of the diaspora is still there. Nobody can take that away, but having something new is also perfectly fine and should be celebrated. Yes, so one of the things I was talking about M'Baku at the palace, when they were talking, and he had like Zuri, Nakia, and Queen Ramonda talking to him about the death of T'Challa. He was like, were the conditions okay? Like when he died, it's like, then that's not really a murderer. Like that is not a suicide or a murderer. So you see Agent Ross trying to say something, and M'Baku and his men just started. You know, one of the things I learned about that is that signifies for me, and I think white people should watch that film, is the idea that the agency of whiteness, that you think you can come in and talk and say things and you're the expert and you know everything. And one of the biggest problems with the aid industry and the international development industry is exactly that. You come into a land, you know nothing about the land, you have no nuances, but you think you can fix things. And one of the beautiful things that M'Baku did is shush him by just grunting like the hate man that he is, and be like, you do not get to say anything here. And that is a very important thing to hold as a white person, that sometimes it's okay to shut up because it's not your place to talk. It's okay. Like, there are spaces and places where you have been the default and you have been talking and talking and not ever listening. Sometimes, you know what? It's okay to listen. And sometimes you just need to know this is not your place. Your place is to listen. The way Agent Ross listened to Zuri when she gave instruction, he followed. And that's one of the beautiful things about the movie. Yes. Oh my God. So I think I said this before. When people were saying that Erik Killmonger is the Malcom X to T'Chaka's Martin Luther King, please don't do that. Like, people who do not moisturize, people with ashy brain cells should just shut up when it comes to this. Do not ever ever bring Malcolm X and Erik Killmonger to be the same people, because they're not. The black community killed Malcolm X. The black community killed Malcolm X. I repeat. So please, let's know who we're talking about. Malcolm X was one of the African American leaders who actually took himself from the United States and went to Ghana and came to different countries in the African continent during the fight for liberation, and he listened and he learned, and he went back and wrote and talked about movements and how we can learn from different movements. That's what Malcolm X did. That is not what Erik Killmonger did. Erik Killmonger is a mercenary of the CIA who only knows to use violence to kill, and Malcolm X was talking about how we can find justice, and sometimes to find justice you might need to use violence, but he was not talking about let's kill everybody and make a third world war and become the new colonizer. Malcolm X's philosophy was not like that. Malcolm X's philosophy is learn, see, open, observe, collaborate. Erik Killmonger do not have any of the elements of Malcolm X. Please leave my man out of your mouth. Oh yes, Nakia's goal. So a lot of people were saying like Erik Killmonger is so revolutionary. No, he's an extremist. Nakia, on the other hand, is very revolutionary. She believes that Wakanda should not be isolating themselves and should render help and take in refugees and do foreign aid. And when the government of Wakanda did not necessarily warm up to the idea and want to do that, she chose as a spy, even though she was being sent by Wakanda, to do something. Like we see the first scene where we see her in northern Nigeria helping girls that are being kidnapped by the Boko Haram group. So basically Nakia's idea, she was saying the same thing as Killmonger, but some people were not listening, because Killmonger is a perfect example of cis male black men. Cisgender black men, and their toxicity of killing and violence and not listening. Like, I understand your rage and your anger, but we cannot use violence to end anything. Violence is not the way to go. You have to do something, but you don't have to kill people. You can put good in the world without killing, and we can find restorative justice like this. Imperialism and nations. So the idea of, wow. Let's talk about that. Imperialism and nation, I think, is the same thing. That Killmonger was an imperialist American who had imperialist ideology because that's everything he knew, and people resonating with him are imperialists, and they need to go and look at the dictionary. What does imperialism means? What am I gaining living and being from? So look back. What is imperialism? What do you gain as someone living in an imperialist culture? An imperialist country? What is it that you gain? So don't let us become the white people of black people. Please understand imperialism and understand where you stand and take a step back to see how you can fix things. But don't say let's start a war when we become the colonizers. Like Wakabi was saying, the world have changed and is becoming smaller, and I feel like I would rather be the conqueror than the conqueror. And let's talk about Wakabi, really. I feel like Wakabi is the classic Brexiter. He was talking, so at a scene, he was talking with T'Challa about what Nakia wants. And he says, if you want me to go out there with my man and fight, I'm ready to go. And T'Challa is like, no, Wakanda does not use our resources to wage wars against other nations. Very important. Just because you have the resources does not mean you need to use them to wage war against others. And loyalty from Wakabi. So T'Challa is Wakabi's best friend. As we see, they grew up together. They're talking about their women together. Like, he was in a conference, like they were together, and Okoye, who is Wakabi's wife or woman anyway, was saying, hello my king, hello my love. You can see how that their relationship is very connected, and I understand the rage coming from Wakabi because his parents were killed by claws, but the loyalty that he just gave to Killmonger, he was the one saying that we don't want strangers to come into our country, and the moment the stranger came with a bag of claws, you literally became his besties, and you literally betrayed your country because you are the protector of Wakanda. You are the defense of Wakanda, and you gave the military of Wakanda to a stranger, even when people were telling you that the challenge is not over. That shows a lot of lack of loyalty. And man, loyalty. Anyway, and also let's talk about communication. I feel like Wakabi was not really in the wrong, but he is in the wrong. Like, I find him to be the weakest link in Wakanda, but it's also like, if only, of course the film is super long and packed. I feel like there are so many scenes that have been cut. Even Ryan Coogler, the director, says that. But if T'Challa was able to communicate with him why they weren't able to kill Klaus, and also to communicate with him about the idea of knowing now that Erik is actually his cousin, maybe there will be a better solidarity and loyalty from Wakabi. But still, as a soldier, your job is to your country and not to a stranger that walked right through your border 5 seconds ago. Just saying that. Bringing the Reno to kill M'Baku, who is your countryman. Wakabi, you got issues, man. Issues. Let's talk about the museum scene. So the museum scene, we see in the British Museum a white curator and Killmonger talking about the mask at the West African exhibition. And this is one of the most emotional things for me as a person who is in the art scene, who love the arts, is that when you go to museums, sometimes you see artifacts from your countries that have been stolen and exploited and looted, and you just feel so much anger and so much the way the museum relates to Black body in that place. Like, we hear Erik saying that since I've been here, I've seen cameras around and people looking at me. This is what I felt when I went to, what is it called, Documenta last year in 2017. I was in Kassel at the Documenta exhibition, and there were like so many nice people. And we were in the Noi Museum in Kassel, me and another Black man who is a friend of mine, and we enter and we were just looking, and there was like artifacts from Congo, artifacts from Nigeria, and we're like, why are this in the Noi Museum? Because that was supposed to be where you find the contemporary arts. Like, these arts are from the 1800s. They do not belong, number one, here, but let's just leave that curator aside. Good luck to them. But then we see the way the people relate to us, the way the space relates to us. They see Black bodies, they're ready to charge as if we are here to take. No, your ancestors take shit from us. We are not here to take anything. But we need the museum to start having a discussion about how to decolonize the museum by starting to give back what is not theirs to those that these things belong to. And how we as Africans need to claim that, number one, and also restore them back to where they belong, and also take care of them and teach what their significance is to our current citizens. Primitive guns, Okoye, I've said that. White people and M'Baku, I've said that. The African nation, can there be an African nation? Is there a possibility to have a united African nation? Yes, there is, but how? We have the resources, both human resources and natural resources, but the things we don't have is the coordination of those resources to actually give us the manpower to build that nation. And personal opinion here, you cannot build an African nation when you're being, like, the African Union cannot be as effective as it should be and as collaborative as it should be if you're being funded by the European Union. Personal opinion. And also the resources. Let's go back to the resources, because I leave that to the very, very end, and there are so many things that I left to the end actually. The vibranium. So Wakanda have vibranium, this incredible metal that they're trying to protect themselves from and the rest of the world from seeing them and knowing that they have it. But you know what? It's not as fictional as we all think that vibranium is fictional. Like, do you know about uranium in Niger, not Nigeria? Niger have uranium at the border with Agadez, from Agadez to Algeria. So Niger is a small nation in West Africa that is francophone because they're colonized by the France, and 70% of the uranium mined in Niger, yeah, you can say the same thing, mined in Niger is mined by a French company, and everything is benefiting France. And when you call people colonizers, they say they don't know and it's their ancestors. No, it's not your ancestors. Like, you're still benefiting from colonizing countries. You are still benefiting from colonizing countries. The way Paris looks today is thanks to N'Djamena. N'Djamena is in Chad. It's thanks to Niamey, Zender, Agadez, and all these countries where you exploit exploit their natural resources and take them and strip them and assault these countries. And if you look at the World Bank and also the United Nations, actually, Niger is one of the poorest countries in the world because they have droughts and they do not have agriculture. They only have natural resources like ores, metals, and different things like that. And those companies that actually, Arriva is the French company that mines uranium, and uranium is a nuclear war, actually. So you can use uranium is a nuclear weapon. You can use it to build wars against various nations. And this is what France is doing, is mining the uranium from Niger Republic. I can leave a link down so you guys can go out. Just search uranium and Niger Republic on Google. Like, people just need to do the homework today, seriously. And I feel like that was one of the reasons I cried in the beginning of the scene, is when they're talking about vibranium. I'm just like, uranium, vibranium, Niger Republic. The scene looks so much like Niamey. Someone growing up in Niamey, I know what Niamey looked like, and the scene looks so much like it. Like, the way the experts in Niamey live is the way the life of, what is it called, the Wakandans are. And then you see bridges and all of that, and I'm just like, if Niamey could only use their own natural resources to the full potential, this is what the country will look like. And we're not talking about that. And I feel like those are conversations that the United African Nation could have, to use all the human resources. We have lawyers, we have people who can check all those trade deals. The trade deals given to African countries are trash, but nobody is talking about that. The institutions that we have as Africans, basically talking about the government, everything, is a byproduct of colonization, is a byproduct of the exploitation of this continent. And talking about that will make us aware of it and know more about our own history. And I feel this is not just for even African Americans need to know that there are countries that you will go to. Don't think that that's your country and you want to fix things. No, you have to listen to the people who live in that country and hear their nuances and read. Reading is a gift, and researching is a gift. Yeah, so for me, that scene really made me cry, because I realized that vibranium is not as fictional as it is. There is coltan in DRC, there is diamonds in Botswana, and check out the diamond mining companies in Botswana and all these countries that have diamond. Where are they from? They're Canadian companies. And what other companies? And French companies. And then you go to DRC, all the coltans, everything that we use in our iPhone, in our laptops, come from this continent. But there is civil war there. That the civil war are being the result of destabilization of government that is being encouraged by the CIA and other external forces that are Western external forces. So whenever we want to talk about imperialism, we need to go deeper than that. We need to go deeper than just colonization. We need to go deeper than what happened 50 years ago. We need to talk about what is happening today in our countries, what is happening right now, the way even the aid industries work, the way the international development industries work. Like, you'll see a job on the website of the UN, UNICEF and everything in Ghana, and saying that we only hire non-Ghanaian, for example. That's a very recent example that I actually had to send an email to UNICEF Ghana and be like, whoa. You're in Ghana, why are you not hiring videographers from Ghana? That's just discriminatory. And also that's a propaganda, because you have an agenda of what images you want to come out of these countries. And those are the images that I think our African Americans and African diasporans see every day of Africa. And we need to create, and I'm very glad that we are creating the images of Africa that we want to see, because we are creative, we are storytellers, and we need to tell our stories and listen to each other. We as Africans of direct African descent have to listen to our African Americans and African diasporan cousins and listen to what they want to tell, and we also listen to them. Like, we just need to listen to each other. I feel like that's the only way we can have United African Nation power and unite African, where we learn from each other. And also the end scene is we see King T'Challa buying the block where Erik Killmonger was. Oh, before that, I'm going to talk about the way Erik Killmonger died, when he had a spear in him and he was like, T'Challa was ready. We could see even in the fight scene, like when they were fighting for the throne, there were so many instances that T'Challa could kill him. Like, he used this word on his neck, there's so many areas you could see that T'Challa could kill him but wasn't trying to kill him, because he said, let's settle this other way. T'Challa is one of those people. I feel like this is one of the best characters of Black Panther, is that he cannot kill unless he have to. Like, he could have killed Erik, but he didn't. but Erik killed him and threw him down, and thank God like he was resurrected, because you know, what's the point of the film then? But you can see that the rage of Erik does not give him anything else, Killmonger, I'm gonna say, to find restoration and justice all the way. He just had to kill. He just have to be killing. And T'Challa is an intellectual, young, cultured person. Wow, I said cultures, and so many people are gonna come for me for being noble African. I'm not trying to be noble. Not all Africans are noble. We all have different structures and societies, and that's fine. Like, there are social structures in Africa that as they exist in the West, not everybody is royalty, and that's one of the new ones we need to talk about. Like, when you say you're from Africa, it doesn't mean you're royal. So anyway, he said one very powerful thing that I cried, and I understand why a lot of what African American people resonate with him. He said, bury me in the ocean for my ancestors who jumped ship because they know death was better than bondage. That really broke my heart, and I think personally that there will be a sequel and he will come back to life. Like, so many people have came back to life in MCU. He's gonna be back. He's not dead, and we didn't even see him being buried by T'Challa. Maybe T'Challa took him and just froze his ass somewhere in the fridge, and it's gonna bring him back sometime soon, you know. Let's stay hopeful. Capitalism. So this is the scene. This is my less favorite scene, and also my favorite scene is the UN scene where after the credit. So if you watch the movie, please stay. There are two other scenes after the credit that you need to watch. It's one where T'Challa is in Vienna at the UN talking about what Wakanda will not come out of isolation, and Wakanda will not watch the world unveiled before their very eye. They're gonna be participants in all of this. And one of the BBC journalists at the UN was asking him, like, what can a country as poor and third world country, I hate that word by the way, a third world country like Wakanda can provide to the aid industry? And T'Challa just like, yeah, you have to live. And also his speech was very colorblind. God, like, that speech that T'Challa gave at the UN was so colorblind that I just like, we're not all one tribe. We are not. But it's your Oxford education that make you blind. It's okay, my brother. It's okay. Yeah. The last thing that I want to say is capitalism, and that's the we live in a capitalistic world. We might not agree with it, and I will say throw the fucking system away, especially the capitalist system. But because we cannot throw it away, and everybody love it so much, I don't know why. T'Challa, we saw him at the scene in California, in Oakland, buying the entire block and using that as their aid outreach, which is one of the biggest things that I found flawed about the film. But it's T'Challa, you never know. Like, when white people want to do their imperialistic good work, they set up fund and outreaches, and that's what Wakanda wants to do. Like, there's no better way to help our black brothers than giving them aid. You cannot give somebody fish, you need to teach them how to fish. But yeah, I feel like this is it. I hope this is as nuanced, and I really hope you actually stay to watch the entire review. Yeah, so one of the things I want us to take away, both as Africans direct descent and African diasporans and colonizers, I will call you colonizer because that is who you are until you have proven yourself otherwise. So the white people God help me. White Oyibos, white people, that is quite telling. The white people and the colonizer is that we need to all come together, especially those who see themselves as allies. We need to come together and learn from the global history of the world to see that this is what happened. This is what our ancestors have done. How can we actively fix it? Or how can we actively learn from their mistake and not repeat them and give back what belongs to, you know, what belongs to Caesar, give it back to Caesar. Give us back our Oba head from the British Museum. It does not belong there. Please give it back to us. But then again, if they give it back to us, where are we going to put it in Nigeria? Tell me, oh, I don't know. But just say it. These are discussions. You see how I switch from my Nigerian, eh? These are discussions we need to have, both in all the sectors that have been touched. And I feel like Black Panther is an amazing movie. You should all see it. I feel like everybody should see it regardless of race and gender, because it transcends everything, really. And I'm not trying to be colorblind here because I ain't colorblind. I'm blackity black. Thank you all so much for watching. share with your people. Let me know what you think about this review. I feel like I needed to do it because so many people have asked me to do it, and I watched the movie 4 times. Like, if you're gonna watch something 4 times, you know, do a freaking badass review. That's why this review is so long. So I'm gonna upload it twice. So there will be part 1 and part 2, and then there will be the 3rd one where I talk about feminism and representation of dark-skinned Black women. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.